Hello students, Mr. Young here. Do you remember when we had that lesson last chapter, and I called it Constitution 101 with Mr. Young? Well, this will basically be Constitution 201. We're diving a little deeper into the Constitution. I know it's not as exciting as a George Washington wrestling King George in a winner-takes-all death match. However, it is nonetheless exceptionally important to know your rights. I, for one, want you to know your rights. It's part of being the informed electorate that the nation needs to succeed. So be a part of the solution, not the problem. Let's move on. Today we're talking about 7 key principles of the Constitution. We're talking about what these principles are and what they mean. Some of them may look a little familiar, and some of them will be new. The first of which we're going to talk about is popular sovereignty. The preamble, or introduction of the Constitution, starts like this. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty, to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. Good words. That we the people part is the key to popular sovereignty. Popular sovereignty means that it is the citizens that are in charge. It means authority of the people. Now I know it doesn't seem like that sometimes, but never forget that the government works for us. We hire them and we fire them. Second principle, republic. A republic simply means the same thing as representative government. The words republic and representative government are synonymous, meaning the same. That means that we don't run the government personally. I don't spend an hour of my day running the government, but we elect people to represent us within government. Generally, the idea is you find the person that most closely aligns with your views, and then that person will run the government in your stead. Representatives. People in the House of Representatives and senators. Limited government. A limited government is a government whose only powers are given to it by the people. They are strictly defined powers. This is to prevent the government from taking away people's rights. As you may imagine, the framers had the actions of Britain right before the Revolution in mind when creating a republic with limited government. Basically, they saw what government overreach was like and they didn't want it, so they made moves to prevent it. Federalism is something we talked about in the last chapter. We said it means that there are multiple governments, state and federal, and even local, all working together. We mentioned how the federal government has powers that it does, and the states have powers that they do, and then there are powers that both do. We didn't go into details, though, and we are going to today. Basically, these different powers have fancy names. Enumerated powers are powers specifically given to the federal government in the Constitution. State governments do not have these powers. Examples would be coining money and maintaining the armed forces. Makes sense. There's no Pennsylvania Air Force. There's no Pennsylvania money. We all share the same Air Force and the same money. That's because these are enumerated powers. Now, reserve powers are the powers that belong to the state and not the federal government, meaning they are reserved for the states. They're not actually listed in the Constitution, but given with the 10th Amendment of the Constitution, which states the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people. So their powers reserved for the states, reserved powers. Makes sense. Examples of reserved powers would be setting up schools, trade within the state, and marriage law. Concurrent powers are powers shared by the state and federal government. We mentioned that examples of these powers would be taxes, also carrying out the law, and even borrowing money. Mr. Yan will unabashedly note that the state and federal governments seem very good at exercising their concurrent powers. Oh, Mr. Yund. Separation of powers. Now, we already stated that the separation of power means there are 3 different branches of government, and they all have specific jobs and tasks to perform. This is to further prevent any one part of government from becoming too powerful. Here's a familiar graphic with our legislative branch, our executive branch, and the judicial branch, and some of their jobs there. We're actually going to talk specifics about these three branches in the next lesson. Checks and balances is something we've also talked about, and that means how these branches, three listed above, have a little bit of say in the other branch's business. This further spreads the power of government and further prevents any branch from becoming too powerful. For example, one of the jobs of Congress is to make a law, but this law, well, it's a bill before it's approved by the president, but it has to be approved by the president. And once it's approved by the president, it can still be decided to be unconstitutional by the court. So that's one thing, one action, but the other branches have a say in it. For a full list of checks and balances, you can check out down here. Things like vetoes and presidents appoint the Supreme Court justices, but they have to be approved by the legislature, things like that. Actually, I think they have to be approved by the Senate, specifically. Alright, now, individual rights is a little subsection that basically covers what we call the Bill of Rights. You will recall that a few states only ratified the Constitution under the stipulation that a Bill of Rights be added post haste, that is to say, very quickly. The Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments or changes to the Constitution. Here are some of the individual rights guaranteed to all citizens. Pay attention, these are your rights too. You have freedom of religion, freedom of speech and the press, freedom to assemble in groups and protest against the government, the right to bear arms, the right to a speedy and public trial by jury, and freedom from cruel and unusual punishment. Other amendments have been made since the Bill of Rights was added. The Constitution is over 200 years old, but it has only been amended 27 times. That's including the Bill of Rights, which means only 17 amendments have been added after the Bill of Rights. The last time it was amended was 1992. Amendments cover a number of topics, everything from basically freeing the slaves to women voting. One time they prohibited the sale of alcohol, and then they made another amendment later to strike out that amendment that prohibited alcohol, and that's why you can still buy booze. It's a fascinating process by which the Constitution is amended. It basically requires near synonymous support. And that's actually a part of this lesson, but I figured we went over enough today, so we're going to go ahead and tack the amendment process onto tomorrow's lesson. And we're going to call it Here for Today. On the next page will be a quiz. Go ahead and let me know if you have any questions, of course. And as always, have a glorious and patriotic day.